Special guest, Roodie, and today we're just doing a little talk interview to get a little bit of his story and maybe a little bit of mine so you get to know both of us a little bit better. Very casual, very raw, and again, I want to thank you for taking time, Roodie, to speak with us today. Tell us your story. Where do you come from as far as your background, studies, and professionally, and what are you doing now?
All right, thanks, Lou. So, I grew up here in Dallas, East Dallas to be more exact. Um, Went to high school at Skyline, which is out in the border town of Pleasant Grove and East Dallas, what I like to call it. Graduated in 2009. Went to Richland Community College, did my basics there, and then I transferred out to Southern Methodist University, or SMU, as people know it here. At SMU, I majored in electrical engineering and math. Graduated in 2014.
I remember that I was like, this guy's so smart and he cooks.
Yeah, so we'll get into that piece. So 2014, I graduated from SMU. I met one of the recruiters for AT&T at school, kicked it off very well, and ended up getting hired as an engineer out at Farmers Branch in one of their offices.
Okay.
So what I did there, I did design work and spectrum planning, which is the frequencies or the signals that phones use to communicate with the antennas.
Okay.
So there's a piece called the North Texas, which is not your typical North Texas. The way that we classify North Texas over there was literally the northern part of Texas. So it included Dallas to Amarillo to El Paso and even little parts of New Mexico, and that was basically the North Texas territory. And so I did design work, which was the basically designing of, don't want to get too technical, but the frequencies that were used to communicate within the North Texas area. And so what I like to, or what I used to like saying was, I was in charge of designing the towers so the magic between the phone and the cell phone towers could happen. And that was fun.
I bet. I am a techie guy, not to your level, but I got to imagine, all of us are so dependent on our cell phones these days. That's pretty important work you were doing. But that's not what you do now.
No.
So how'd that transition go?
So before I left AT&T a little over a year ago, I actually got promoted to be a financial analyst at the company. And so I went from designing and managing frequencies, cell phone towers for AT&T, to doing budget planning and budget. I just took care of budget for one of our groups within AT&T, product groups. And so yeah, I did engineering for about a year and 8 months, and then I was a financial analyst for a little over a year, a little over 3 years. And I say a little over 3 because I left AT&T right a little bit before my 5-year mark. So I was a finance guy more than I was an engineer, and I enjoyed that very much. And so I started to realize that I had a passion for business. I transitioned into a field that I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I really enjoyed that experience. And so little by little, I started getting more and more curious about how businesses ran and how they function to a point where I told myself, um, what if I get into starting a business one day? And so the opportunity presented itself, and I was a big, and still am, a big traveler. And so one of the things that I enjoyed a lot post graduation, post undergrad, was traveling the U.S. And as I traveled the U.S., I realized that I enjoyed food a lot. Growing up here at the restaurant that we're in, I had a thing for good food, and when I was growing up, this is all I really knew was just Mexican food. And so when I went out to Miami for the first time, I tried out Cuban food. And lo and behold, I really, really enjoyed the Cuban sandwich. And so fast forward a few years after that, I started traveling to find different dishes. And so after realizing that whenever I would come home that I would have to wait until next time to have this authentic dish that I could only have in X city, I said, well, I've always wanted to start a business. I love traveling. I love food. Why don't I just create a business that has staple dishes from across the U.S.? And so that's how that started. And when I left AT&T, I was really gonna do this more as a not a part-time, but more of a side hustle, side gig, and kind of get my feet wet. That was 2018. In 2019, I got my feet wet, and I was planning on going back to work in corporate, but I fell in love with the freedom and the opportunity to really leave my mark on Dallas. And so I said, what the heck, why not? Let's go ahead and enjoy this and see where this goes. And so the first full year that I was really in business, because I started this back in 2018, September of 2018, I had no idea what I was doing. In 2019, I was figuring out a little of what the identity of the business was. And I started, selling at the farmer's market, Dallas Farmer's Market. That's where I started, that's where we started. And I learned a lot being there, that I wanted to start, branching out a little bit more and getting a taste of giving Dallas a bit of our taste, not just within the farmer's market. So I started doing pop-ups at breweries. And so that started to grow and to build up. But when that was going on, we were actually called Adios Mío.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I learned a lot in 2019 that, looking back, if I may be honest, it was a tough year for me in terms of me figuring things out. Like I said, I've always wanted to start a business, but I had no idea how to start one. When I got my feet wet, I had to learn, I guess, the hard way on how to start building a business from scratch.
What were like the major steps or challenges? Because I'm sure if I went out tomorrow and said, "Oh, I'm going to start my own business. I love doing food," it's not easy. It's not something that just anyone can do.
No, it's certainly tough, but it is doable. I may be speaking too early in terms of the doable part, because I'm still what I like to consider the beginning stages. But I think one of the big struggles in building your business is, first, my piece was the identity. And one thing I've learned is you know, the supply and demand thing that you learn in economics or that you've heard of a lot, well, that has a big factor into building a business. You can have the supply, but if you don't have the demand, business is not going to go very far. And so I think that's one of the things where one of the things that I was running into from the beginning was I was trying to create something in a very competitive environment, because you look around and you see a restaurant in every corner, a food concept in every corner, and it's difficult to differentiate yourself. And so I thought with my unique concept of what I was wanting to do was create a foodie spot, but my name was kind of holding me back. And so one of the things that I learned from that is marketing is a very powerful asset that every business, I think, in my personal opinion, should really understand, because without the marketing piece, it's hard to start taking off from there. If you don't have even the simplest thing that a lot of people that I could consider myself to be in that group of, a lot of people didn't think of in the beginning, which was the name, that really was holding me back. And so, like I said, I didn't know about business, but there's a lot of books out there, and there's a lot of resources that I started using that time to really educate myself and understand marketing, because that's one of the things that I was lacking in the beginning. And so I took all the concepts and all the lessons learned from the failures, experiences, successes, and the lessons learned, and it was around the end of 2019 where I said we need to change the name up, because it's not helping me out. And so when the idea of changing it to Roodie Shack came to me, I realized that a lot of people were not necessarily saying, let's go out to Idris Meal, let's go out to Roodie's. And so I kept hearing that a lot, or let's go to Roodie's, and I said, people, I think in the beginning of a small business, go out and support the person rather than the concept, the establishment. And so I used all of that to say, all right, let's play on the word Foodies. My name is Roodie. It sounds very identical. There's a lot of Roodies out there. You got Roodie's Chicken, you got Roodie's Barbecue, you got a lot of Roodies out there. Let's find a way to differentiate ourselves. And I changed the name at the beginning of this year and named it to Roodie Shack, playing on the word Foodies. And,
okay.
And so now, the piece that I struggled with last year was our identity. And with the name itself, it can be a good conversation starter where I can have that conversation with someone and them have the aha moment when they put the two and two together, that we're playing on the word Foodies, and just say, we're a foodie shack. Our concept is not necessarily a just strict Mexican, strict Cuban, strict barbecue. No, it's we're gonna embrace the concept of what America has to offer. And I know it's not very common or very heard of to say, let's go get some American food. Let's go get some burgers, or it's mainly let's go get some Mexican. Let's go get some Chinese. Let's go get something. But I really want to embrace the dishes that America has to offer. And so, with all of this, we came up with the concept of changing the name, going from there, and then really embracing who we are. And I want to say that 2020 has so far treated me and treated the business very well.
Well, that's great news. So, just to rewind a little bit on that, um, so as far as setting up shop, it's I can't imagine that anybody can just bring their food to the farmers market and what have you. They've got to be. Do you have to get certain licenses, certain permissions, get
Yes.
vetted by the health department, or
Yeah,
how's that?
yeah. So every city is different. That everybody operates the same way. So one is the establishment needs to have a certified food manager license, and so that's one of the licenses that is required. And then two is you have to have a commissary kitchen. And so what happened there with that was I was looking into a lot of commissary kitchens, and they're quite expensive just to rent out. The spot is really pricey, and I have my home here at the restaurant. I spend most of my time here now, and this is where I prep. So I come here in the mornings when no one's here from 6 to 9 a.m. and I do my stuff. I do my stuff during the slow times of the day, which is around this time from like 3 to 5, and then in the evenings from like 9 to 10:30. Those are like my ranges that I use. And so to answer your question again, you need the food handler's license, the food manager's license, someone that needs to be certified, that understands the health concern behind serving food, a commissary kitchen, and then like when we go sell at the farmers market, we just have to work with the city of Dallas to ensure that we're vetted, and it's a yearly permit that I get renewed to sell like at the farmers market.
Oh, okay. Now you've mentioned and referred a few times the family business where we're sitting right now. Did you kind of work your way up? Do you know every side of it, or what was your involvement growing up? Because I know I started bussing tables, and then from there I waited tables. I did some prep in the kitchen, never got to the actual chef cook level, and I definitely didn't get to the management, all the ins and outs of paperwork and all that.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. I'm glad you asked that question, because I earned my first set of tips when I was $6. When I was 6 years old. I started helping out my dad when he first opened up the location back in 96, 97. And I didn't know that by just, treating people right, they'd give you money in return. So I think I fell in love with that. And so I grew up as a waiter. From 6 years old up until, basically up until 3 years ago, little under 3 years ago, which when I was 25, I was a waiter. And so I never really understood the kitchen until I started experimenting with the foods that I was going to put on my menu. And I started off first by smoking brisket. So that was one of the first things that I really learned, and I attribute a lot to brisket because it kind of started me on the right path. And so we have a commercial smoker in the kitchen over there, and we even offer the brisket here at the restaurant. So it's kind of cool to think how I learned how to smoke brisket at my 600 square foot apartment's balcony. And yeah, I just literally started with a smoker. It was probably about maybe this big. I could fit two briskets in there. I would set an alarm every 2 hours late at night so I can go in and throw logs to get the fire going. and came here and I started, getting more acquainted with the food prep process because, right, you have to follow certain standards, certain processes, so the food gets handled correctly, and it's kind of cool now. Fast forward 2.5 years later, when I first started to now, where I can say that I understand the restaurant business both in and out, and I always dreamed of helping my dad out here, and it's funny how, like, even now that I'm not here, I've probably contributed more to the business. Well, not me not being here, and I say that because I understand the business a lot more, and there's been some suggestions and some changes that I have helped make, and it's nice to see the results, play out for themselves. And so yeah, to answer your question, I grew up as a waiter. Now I'm a cook, and the cool thing about the pop-up scene is you kind of get to be both, right? Because you still have the opportunity to talk to people, and then you also have the opportunity to make them a dish that they're really going to enjoy. So it's how people have put it lately, and I really like how they say it, and I like repeating it, but it's my way of showing people how much I appreciate them, how much I love them, right? And I do that by making them feel at home, but not only that, I serve them a dish where they say this is something that, like, reminds me of home. And so yeah, I know the business inside and out, and yeah, can't wait to see where this is going.
Very exciting, because that's really something that put, kind of what you were speaking to there at the end, put an impression on me. You can go to a lot of places and they're just kind of throwing food together, that they have maybe a little idea of what hospitality and service is supposed to be. But, when I came and visited your pop-up for the first time, I felt very welcome. All of a sudden, it's like I maybe hung out with you a few times already in just a few minutes. And when I tasted your food, it's like you obviously care about your food. You can tell in every meat, there's nothing bland, there's nothing too greasy. I mean, everything tastes delicious, on point. And I really commend you for that, because, I dabbled in cooking. As a matter of fact, I wanted to go to culinary school. And, I never got to the point where I could really perfect dishes, and not only that, make mass quantities to feed mass quantities like you're doing. I mean, I do good to feed me and my wife, a few days a week. So I definitely like the points that you've made as far as bringing things home that we may not always get to eat. Because, I do look for certain things. I will actually go distances for unique foods and foods that I can't find just at every corner. For example, I had a quest to find a Japanese jiggly cheesecake.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't find that anywhere. I'd always see all these food shows and advertisements and articles talking about it. And if I go to, like, for example, California, I could probably eat it every day at a different place. But I finally found a place in Richardson that sells them, and I don't know if they're good or not, because it's my first one, but I liked it. And as far as your food, I know that you're forming your menu, so you're kind of known for your tacos, though, right?
Yeah.
But you're thinking, or your aim is really to be more eclectic, more just American, not kind of touch on that again.
Yeah, so I share with everyone here that I've met, that I've had the pleasure of meeting, my experiences with food. I believe that you can really understand and get a taste, no pun intended there, of the food and who's making it and where it comes from. I'm very, very fond of culture. And so growing up, I grew up on tacos. I knew tacos, and I knew what was a good taco from a bad taco. And so that's kind of how that piece got started. It's me just sharing the foods that I've experienced. Now, I mentioned earlier how I became an avid traveler, and I just love traveling the U.S. and it's me again sharing my food experiences with you guys, and it's pretty cool to know that, for instance, a dish that you would not ever expect to hear of here in Dallas or any place that's no other than San Diego be something that you look forward to eating, right? So, and then what I'm referring to is my California burrito. That one has French fries in it, and it's one of the things that it's pretty cool because when I first started, it wasn't my best seller. It was actually my poorest seller, and as the time goes by, and to this day, it is actually my number one seller.
Oh, really?
And so I like knowing the fact that yes, it's nice to know that you got a really good dish that came from the bottom and became the number one seller, but I see it a little different. People at first were hesitant to eat something that they weren't used to eating, right? And French fries inside it, and people, for the most part, right, they're very restricted in saying, I haven't done it this way, and I'm not probably going to do it. Well, I want to change the idea of embracing change, right? Getting out of your comfort zone, and what I'm trying to do with the food is do that by showcasing the awesome food that I've had by going outside my comfort zone. And the California burrito, in my opinion, has shown me, and it's shown a lot of people, that it's okay to try different things, and if you try them, you may like them. And so that's what I see with the California burrito is, like I said, it started at the bottom, and then it climbed to the top, meaning people enjoyed the change. They really enjoyed something different, and now they come back looking for something different. And so most recently I went out to Minneapolis to find the Juicy Lucy, which is...
I was hoping you were going to talk about that.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is it's a burger that originates from Minneapolis. And the kick to that one is we're all used to eating our cheese on a burger, either on top or just within the hamburger, right? And so over there, what they believe in, and what has been a very big staple dish, is a Juicy Lucy. And the thing about that one is the cheese is inside the patty. And so when I first started traveling, I would showcase my experience. The excitement wasn't there. Now, people that have trusted me and enjoy the non-so-norm food that I provide, they really enjoyed the trip. And so that's the joy that I get out of it is you have people that are embracing something different and looking forward to it. And they were super excited to a point where they said, I had a really good customer, and it made my day. And he said, let me know when you bring out the Juicy Lucy so I can ask for the day off.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's, it touched the heart because, I want people to be okay with change, because that's where growth lies, right? And I've grown tremendously by traveling, by just getting out of my comfort zone. And if I can share that experience with anybody that I come across with through food, I'm more than happy to do it. And so, yeah, when I went out to Minneapolis to understand and get to know a good Juicy Lucy, it was nice to see the people that were like, dude, I can't wait for you to have it out here. Let me know when, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, it's a matter of now me experimenting with it and getting to a burger that can show you how much Minneapolis or how Minneapolis as a city can be through a burger.
I did actually learn something from your trip because I really hadn't put a lot of thought, and I maybe even seen it somewhere before of where the Juicy Lucy came from. I will say that I'm excited to taste yours because I've only tasted one before. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Lucille's in Fort Worth?
I have not, no.
There's a Lucille's in Fort Worth that I don't know if they serve it right now, but they did when I visited. And it was all right, but I didn't fall in love with the dish, so hopefully that'll happen when you bring out yours.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing that I really, I guess you can say, take pride in because I won't offer something that I'm not gonna like, and so and I think I mentioned this to someone when I did a pop up at I believe it was Petticola's. And I shared with her my story as well of how I got here. And I owe it to my engineering brain to make sure that I understand how a dish is made. Now, I don't have culinary background, right? What I do have is an engineering background. And so it's a lot of trial and error, and it's imagining in my head how this ingredient's going to do with this and trying to understand, all right, maybe I need to minimize this and up this one up a little bit, or maybe even take it away. But it takes me about maybe 10 to 12 to 15 versions of a dish before I can finally say, all right, I think I got it down, and then be comfortable enough to share it. So what I'm trying to say here is I will try my hardest for you to enjoy that burger and say, man, not only did I enjoy it, but I got a feeling of how Minneapolis, or why Minneapolis enjoys this burger so much, because this is really awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's the best point of view or goal to have when you're developing something is not can I make it, not can I sell it, but can I make it well, and can I be proud of it, and can I give that person some emotional reaction? Because you can eat anywhere, you can stay home, but if you can have some kind of emotional connection with it, that's usually what makes the biggest impression. What last question I have? I know we're kind of getting where I've made you talk for a while.
No, you're good. You're good.
But what do you do as research? I mean, I know that you have a family restaurant. I know that you have your travels, but what do you do when for fun or for any kind of research? 'Cause let me put it this way: I cannot get enough of food content. I'm on YouTube looking at YouTube shows. I'm on the Food Network. I'm listening to other shows and so forth. So do you do a lot of that? I mean, is this a good that kind of pastime for you as well?
Yeah, so I think I've always been a curious human being. I have a passion for reading books and just really understanding how things work. One thing I learned when I was working at corporate, one of my mentors taught me that you have to be proficient in an area. And so what I do now is I try to be not only one of the best businessmen out here, but right now my focus is the food. So I'm trying to become as best acquainted with food, and sometimes it doesn't lie in just food itself. And what I mean by that is the brain, the way that I see, or at least how my brain works, is you're not gonna find answers in the same area, same space, same whatnot. And what I mean by this is, for instance, if I'm gonna be a really good food business guy, anything that relies along that realm, I can't focus 100% on just the food. So what I mean by that is I like to read other things that will help me view it from another point of view. And so I like reading books that sometimes aren't food focused, and I get ideas from that realm and see how can I apply it so we can kind of change this up a little bit and make this pretty unique. And so I do my research in the food because obviously, right, I need to understand if I do this, why is this happening? Basically, just understanding the why, and then two, for the creativity part, sometimes it's good to broaden yourself in other areas. For instance, in this case, if I'm trying to do food, to educate yourself in areas that are not in food. And that basically just, I guess, keeps the two sides of my brain going, which is the analytical and then the creative part going, to where I'm hoping that by whenever it's time that my brain is really needed, I have the combination of the two to create something unique.
That's great because, yeah, I mean, to touch on that, you are wearing quite a number of hats. When I think about a business, I think about a back of the house, front of the house, and then maybe even an administrative, somebody that doesn't mind running the books, paying the people, so forth. And you're doing all three, right? You when you've talked about your business, though, you've said we, and I know that when I see you in the farm market, you're not always alone.
Yeah.
So what makes up your team right now?
So we got a few people that help us, and I say we because it's I have not been able to do this on my own. I am fortunate enough that when I come here at the restaurant, I help out the restaurant, but I also get a lot of help in return from the cooks here because they've seen the business grow, they've seen me grow with it. They see my curiosity to learn back in the kitchen. They're willing to give me a hand as long as I'm willing to learn. And so, even though they're behind the scenes, I still say we, and I consider them as part of the we. And then I got my brother-in-law that's been amazing. He's the one that I always think of when I say we, because he's been helping me out since day one. And then I've got even some of my fraternity brothers that occasionally, if I reach out to them, they'll help me out. And so it's been a collaborative effort, and although it has been my vision, it's been difficult to do this on my own. And the more I understand business, I realize that a business is all about the team. Without the team, there is no business. There can be a guy or a gal that has the visions, but if you're trying to execute and wear all these hats all at once, your head is only one, and you can only put on one hat. And so at the end of the day, it becomes difficult to do this on your own, and so it's important to build up a good team, and that's where I currently am right now. I use my successes and my failures from building up the business to now to realize my focus right now is building the team, because this is who is going to take us to the next level. And by understanding how important a team is, I've said we since day one, just because it's not just about me. We gotta do it together, and we're doing it together. So yeah, we is always going to be a term that I use a lot. Occasionally I use I, just to know that it's me speaking, but when it comes to all of this, it's really we, and it's not just me.
Well, that's very admirable. I mean, and I can tell that and hear the sincerity coming from you in that, because not everybody's gonna take that route, right? They're gonna be more about themselves, or maybe popularity. Like me, I am kind of a restaurateur reporter. I wear a lot of different adjectives in what I do as my pastime. And when it comes to looking at how many followers I have or likes and so forth, to me, it's not a scoreboard. To me, it's kind of like, well, I know that I'm doing a service for other people that they're enjoying. I know I'm making friends, and I know I'm connecting a community, because if you appreciate the people around you, as far as regulars that come into your business or regulars that you run into or people that help you, I think that can be one of the best strengths that somebody can have. Now, I know I could probably keep probing you for questions, and there's probably a lot more you can share, but I do want to stop here and just keep this kind of in a digestible, smaller morsel than to drag it out. But I think we've talked on a lot of good points here. I really appreciate you sharing your time, your experience, your story. And I wish you success, because I think you are on that milestone. In school I learned that if you're going to start a hospitality business, a restaurant in particular, your first year is going to be your hardest. You can't be planning on being profitable in that first year. And so you're rounding that corner. For those of you that might not have heard of Roodie and his business before today, I looked at, or I follow other influencers, other businesses and so forth on Instagram, and I'm telling you that what got me to try his tacos was this explosion. It's just like everybody was liking his posts or posting about visiting and eating his food, and I'm like, who is this guy, and what is he doing with those tacos? Because you can find tacos a lot of different places, and you may even be able to find some of his unique dishes somewhere else. But I do